It is 6:05 Eastern Time on the East Coast, 3:05 on the West Coast. How's it going, everybody? Let's just see a little bit, yeah. I love this intro. Alrighty. What's going on, everybody? C. Workman here, Cody Workman, whatever you want to call me. I don't care. As long as it's appropriate and I can tell who I am when you reference me. So, uh, yeah. How's it going, everybody? I have to say, this has been actually, I don't know if I would quite say smoother transition. For those who weren't here last week when I went live, my video capture, I show it, whatever you call it, like it was acting up on me. Audio was playing for a little bit. My mic wasn't coming out for a bit. So yeah, I got that straightened out this week. However, this time, because of the wonderful internet that is Judson University, I had to make some change over to my hotspot for the iPhone. But so far, it looks like everything is holding up somewhat decent. Yeah, I think it's going. Let's see here. I'm gonna go chat. Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, we already got a lot more people in the chat already than last week, so this is already a big step in itself. So let's see. We got Fish, hello. NRF 2005, hello to you, sir. CJ and Mateo. Who the hell's Mateo? It's Mateo. Mateo, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. I saw the E and I had an absolute brain fart. Yeah, CJ, Mateo, Brendan what's up? And we got Mr. Carnation in the flesh here as well. So, yeah. Oh, already 8 viewers. This is going to be, wow, this is already surpassing last week's episode, guys. So I greatly appreciate it. If y'all don't mind, go ahead and share this stream with the world on your Twitters. Get some people to hop in here because we got a lot of things to talk about today. So yeah, as I said, I was having a lot of internet issues before this was going up, and so my notes are kind of scrambled here a little bit because I didn't get the absolute actual outline that I wanted to. But yeah, now that all you guys are here, I appreciate it. So I guess we're gonna roll off first with just recapping the Daytona 500, and wow, there was some really great moments, and as we know, some unfortunate bad moments. But let's just kind of go from starting from the beginning. So, first of all, before you have everything that started, you have President Trump that showed up to this. Now, I'm not going to get political or anything. I know I have my own personal beliefs and opinions for politics and whatnot. If you ever have a personal conversation with me, it's easy to know what side of the aisle I fall on. But still, though, when you have the President of the United States show up to any event, it's a big deal. And we saw it. First off, right when they started the cable side of the podcast, not the podcast, but the race, not with FS1, but as soon as they started over on Fox, when and it immediately cut to Air Force One flying over the racetrack. I mean, come on. How can you say that that's not badass? Uh, Literally, like we don't see him do that in any other sport like that. And I thought that was just an amazing way to kick off the pre-race show and to make his presence known. And then um, just the other stuff they did too between giving the command to start engines. I will say I had to do a little fact check just because I was like unsure that I thought President Bush gave the command in 2004. He did, but he didn't do it in the capacity that Trump gave the command. That was awesome for him to do and to see. And then to top it all off, he took the presidential motorcade around the racetrack. That 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 was awesome when I was seeing that. It was like no one has done anything like that ever, and so I don't even think the president nothing. We've never had anything like that in U.S. history where we had the president do something like that at any sporting event. Taking the presidential motorcade around the high banks of, well, he didn't go up on the banking because of his vehicle, but uh, to have the presidential motorcade go along the high banks at Daytona, are you kidding me? Like, it if that doesn't like make you proud of your country or think, wow, this is badass. I'm sorry, I don't know what else does with works. I just thought that was amazing. And then to top it all off, right before they waved the green flag, he's like, "Hey, give me an official radio." And then he goes ahead and radios all the drivers to have a safe race and good luck. And uh, yeah, that was an amazing way to kick off the 500. But yeah, we're getting going, and then Mike Joyce says, "If you have your favorite phrase to say at the TV, now it's time to say it." And right when I'm about to say "boogity boogity boogie," there comes the rains. Wow, what that was quite the way to put the kill on a amazing mood at that point. But yeah, came back, rain delay, ran about 20 laps or so, and then unfortunately they had to postpone it to the next race to the next day. Uh, but yeah, for those who don't know, just keeping up on what the TV ratings were and all that. Adamson reported that Fox TV earned 10.9 million viewers in just those 20 laps from Sunday's coverage, which was up 19% from the full race average of 9.1 million from last year. And the initial tune in was 11.1 million viewers, up 32% from last year. Now, I'm going to say, like, I won't deny it. I think it was what we may call the Trump effect. But still, when you have ratings that improve that much in just a period amount of in that period of time, and it wasn't just, I don't think it was just Trump either, just the president showing up. We also saw how ratings for the class were the highest since the sprint showdown in 2014. So it wasn't just Trump showing up. I think it was like this overall build to the 500, which personally I feel like was one of the biggest build-ups for any 500 in my lifetime and for a long time. So I think that's kind of what got the viewership up. But yeah, just like throughout the entire race in general, I mean, it was honestly about what I was expecting. A lot of people were taking care of their cars, their equipment, going single file, first two stages, and of course we got the Stenhouse special there in stage one, taking out my boy Byron, which I was not happy about at all. For those who don't know, William Byron is my favorite NASCAR driver. If you didn't know that, now that you know that now. So yeah, I was not very happy, especially because he was one of my five guys that was in my fantasy. However, they made it pretty easy to take out my garage driver, which was Priest. So anyway, yeah, stage one and two were what we're expected, and stage three also. The thing that sucked about stage three, and I have to go back and watch it, is that unfortunately with how late they scheduled it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time, that pushed a little bit into my uh, evening class. But thankfully, the exam that we had to take, I just hurried up and took that thing as fast as I could while giving correct answers, obviously. Um, but yeah, like I didn't see the entirety of stage three, mainly the last few laps, because when they threw that red flag for that big one, which by the way, I mean, I know as much as I am not the biggest fan of the 22, I do not blame him for what you're doing because hey, it's 15 laps to go. You got to start making this stuff happen at that point. I mean, yeah, he did, and yes, he did have 15 to go, but that's when things are ramping up, and you can't tell. stuff like that. And plus, it's coming down to the end of Daytona 500. The drivers are already edgy because we were already running 24 hours after where we probably should have ended the race. But yeah, I don't know if I would totally fault Logano on that, even though he was pretty aggressive. But yeah, I had those wrecks there at the end, which I was not surprised of at all, just because it is the 500 and what we saw in the Clash, how people were going crazy in there. Um, and then we get to the final restart. So, uh, those who don't know, and I think those some of you guys that were in, especially my fantasy that I'm involved in, Ryan Blaney was my pick to win the 500. And the guys that had my fantasy were Hamlin, Newman, Austin Dillon, uh, Byron. Then I subbed him in for Priest, and then I also had Matt DiBenedetto. But the three guys are I had three of my guys up there towards the end, in AD, Hamlin, and Newman. So literally, like the last lap, I'm watching them just go back and forth. Newman gets the push from Blaney going to turn 3. I thought Newman was going to win that race until I saw Blaney back up to uh, Hamlin, and so keep in mind that Blaney was my pick. I was just focused straight on Blaney coming off the final corner. Saw Blaney go down low. Actually, I think he got a little bit of a hit from Hamlin, actually. I kind of shot his car down low. Newman blocked. And then that's where we get to the Newman accident. So, like I said, with Blaney being my pick, at the time I was what from the time they were coming off 4 till they crossed the start finish line, I was just focused on Blaney. So yeah, I saw Newman get turned into the wall, but I thought that's all that happened. I thought all that happened to Newman was that he got turned into the wall and was flying down the track upside down. It wasn't until they showed the replay where he got hit in the driver's side window upside down where I thought, "Oh my god, this is not good at all." And like I said, I was just coming out of an exam too when I saw it, and there were some of my classmates were seeing me reacting, asking me like, hey, what's going on? And like I literally showed them, and literally so many students there, my fellow classmates, were like, oh my gosh, like they couldn't believe. They asked me like, how bad, like, is he all right? He's gonna get out, and I'm like, I don't know if he's gotten out or not, but and he hasn't gotten out, but I'm telling you, I've never seen a wreck this bad. And I was watching NASCAR America, was it yesterday or 2 days ago? And um, Steve Letarte brought up a good point that he himself he didn't realize how bad the Newman wreck was because he was so focused on the finish. I mean, you go back to finish, and Hamlin beats Blaney by 1/100th of a second, second closest finish ever in 500 history. So just with that being as just that in itself, I was focused on that. I didn't realize how bad the Newman wreck was until the replay. And then, so like we're so accustomed, seeing these guys like, oh come on, they're gonna get out. Yeah, they may need to be. Yeah, we've seen guys like have to get cut out of their cars before. I mean, Newman had to get cut out of his car at a wreck in '09 at Talladega. I believe they had to cut him out in his '03 wreck at Daytona in pretty much the same exact spot. I may be wrong on that, but I mean, we've seen drivers before have to get cut out of their cars. But I mean, when I saw how much that that A that A post, I think it's called the A post, but um, that part of the roof where it caved down on the driver's side, and that literally like the car, it wasn't sitting on its side, it wasn't sitting on its roof, it was sitting on the part of the car where you expect the driver's head to be. And where I saw it sitting on there, uh, I I practically broke into almost immediate prayer because I just had a feeling it was not good at all. Um, so like all of us, we were just kind of, waiting for him because usually, when we see wrecks happen like that, we're always, just waiting for that announcement that, hey, he's communicated with with the safety crew that, he's awake, that he's okay, or we at least wait for something from the medical team or the safety team to say that, he is conscious or he's alert. We didn't even get that. So not hearing any of that news at all, I was like, oh no, oh no. I mean, like, and I'm really curious, like, as far as what people who were like NASCAR fans in 2001 thought. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is our Dale Earnhardt story right now. Because I mean, in 2001, I was only 3 years old, so I couldn't comprehend, how bad or dire the situation was back then in 2001. Nor was our family really following NASCAR at that point. It wasn't really until 2003 when I was 5 years old where I was starting to follow NASCAR. Um, but after that, like just sitting there in that suspense, there's all these speculations, people like wondering, I mean, there's a lot of hearsay, but me personally, unless it was anything from NASCAR or Ross Fenway or NASCAR on Fox or NBC or Bob Hawkins or whatever, literally, I was literally ignoring almost every single tweet that was like being put out about what people thought of Newman in his condition. Literally, like I just spent about 10, 15 minutes straight in prayer, and like, cause I just had literally my gut feeling was, this is not going to be good. And so, like, and the worst part of that too was the suspense. It was the wreck happened uh just shy of 8 o'clock Eastern time, and they didn't give us any update about his condition until the top of the hour, 10 o'clock Eastern time, which was 2 hours later. And there's of course, there's that thoughts in my head too. It was about 2 hours or so where they released the status of Earnhardt's condition, and like you start thinking of things like that, and we haven't heard anything about Newman, and it was like, wow, I like saying prayers obviously, but I just don't know how well it's going to turn out. But thankfully at 10 o'clock they came out with the news that said that yes, he was in serious condition, but he had non-life threatening injuries. Well, just to hear non-life threatening injuries at that point, I was like, wow, are you kidding me? I mean, to be honest, I was just hoping for the news that he was going to be alive, honestly. Like, I was expecting, possibly uh, critical condition at that point. But, for the magnitude of the crash that he had, and 2 hours later stated he was in serious condition but non-life threatening, that was amazing. Um, and then, real quick before I progress with Newman himself, just to go back, with how the atmosphere was at the racetrack and everything, and I was also seeing stuff on social media, going after Denny Hamlin. Um, yeah, Denny Hamlin has uh, no reason to be ridiculed for what he did. I mean, you think about it, he won his third Daytona 500. That is elite company, let alone being the only the fourth driver in history to win back-to-back Daytona 500s, and that was in mid 90s when Sterling Marlin did it, 94, 95. So like 25, 26 years since we've seen that. So obviously, he's going to have an amount of celebration, jubilation, but unfortunately, he was hooking off his radios and everything, and we saw immediately that as soon as they found out the news about Newman, that their total demeanor changed. There was, I mean, yeah, there was confetti and stuff in Victory Lane, but there was no cheering, there was no yelling. I mean, Hamlin stood up on top of the car and like did like a little like fist held his fist in the air, but there was no smile on his face at all. Um, so yeah, I would not fault Denny at all about what he was going through or his whole perspective on the situation. Uh, so yeah, that's all I gotta say about Denny. Um, so yeah, that was going on, and then also like the other guys I was thinking about too. I was thinking about Ryan Blaney and Corey LaJoy. I'm sure a lot of us, we've seen the pictures start to go around on social media the past 24 hours or so of LaJoy uh, on his knees next to his race car. Yeah, he kind of made it pretty apparent that there was a certain area of his body that was hurting after that impact. But he did acknowledge too. Yeah, I did say a prayer for Newman or for whoever he hit. He actually said he didn't know who he hit at the time. He was just saying a prayer for whoever he hit. So, uh, but yeah, I was praying for him, and I was praying for Blaney. Like I know, just thinking about just because the thoughts of Earnhardt was going through my mind and everything. I was kind of thinking about like how Sterling Marlin and Ken Schrader felt after Earnhardt's accident, and we know how guilty and how terrible that Marlin felt. I was just also praying for Newman to be okay, just for Blaney's sake. Just for how young he is, how new to the sport that he is. Um, had the worst case scenario happened, I would absolutely hate to see Blaney and LaJoy having to deal with the incidents that happened on Monday night that they had to like live with through the majority of their racing career. So for everything to happen, so for Newman to be okay, uh, I'm really thankful for those guys in that aspect. But going back to Newman though, um, just seeing how the days progressed, how they said that the next day that he was awake and alert and speaking with doctors, um, that I don't know if I would say I was expecting it, but I was kind of like, oh, okay, he was in serious condition yesterday, and the next day, he's at least like awake and alert, and he's talking to people. But then yesterday hits, Wednesday hits, and there's photos of him standing up with his daughters, like in a whole hospital garment and everything, but standing up, like just from what could see, not no cuts or bruises or swelling or anything, and then at noon, 1 o'clock, whatever, he walks out. He walks out of the hospital. He is treated and released from the hospital. For those who don't know, I am very strong in my faith. I'm going to school for youth ministry, Christian ministry, and literally for him to go from a wreck that he had at 8 o'clock in the evening on Monday, from what looked like a worst case scenario, to walking out of a hospital 38, 39 hours later. I'm sorry, but that does not happen without divine intervention. I put it so many times on my Twitter that how like the power of prayer, power of prayer, power of prayer is a legit thing, and to see how Newman went from serious condition to walking out of a hospital 36 hours later, that is absolutely phenomenal to see. Um, I know my mother. She's a physician assistant. She's done surgery, orthopedics in the past, and she even. I mean, obviously, we don't know what the injuries that Newman had. Uh, exactly. I mean, if I had to guess, and like, please, this is not a report or anything. If I had to give my personal guess about what happened, it was maybe something like head trauma related, whatever. Uh, but still, for him to walk out of that hospital with his daughters arm in arm, Uh, that was so amazing to see. Now, with that being all said, this is where we go to a point of, where do we go from here? Um, it's no secret and it's super apparent, how much safety improvements that we saw in NASCAR going forward after Dale Earnhardt's accident, between the implementation of the Hans device, the uh, the addition of safer barriers and safer walls on all the tracks that we went to, improvements to the cars themselves over the years, between the car of tomorrow, things like that. Um, but still, after an incident like this, I don't see how nothing. I do not see how absolutely nothing is done after this accident. Um, and one thing that I think about that will probably be brought up for a discussion is the whole overtime format that we have. Um, 2 days was yesterday or 2 days ago. I was watching David Land's video, and I'll say right now, I don't agree with a lot of things that he says, like when it comes to NASCAR. I mean, there's some things I agree with him with, some things I disagree with him about. Had a little spar with him over a minor spar with him over Twitter during summer of last year, but he brought up the fact about how we glorify Rex. And I mean, you see it too. I mean, how many times, when we see when was the last time we have seen a promo for a super speedway race, or any race in particular, where in the promo there is not a wreck being shown? You see it all the time. And we talk about this whole thing all the time, called the big one or stuff like that. All like, oh, look at all these cars that are involved in this wreck. Half the field involved in this wreck. Wow, incredible. I mean, I don't know about you guys. Well, yes, wrecks, some can be spectacular. I watch NASCAR to see who's going to win a race and who's going to finish where. I don't watch NASCAR to see how many cars can get tore up, and how many potential injuries that we can get. So one of the things that David brought up in his video was about the whole overtime scenario. Uh, I don't agree with him that overtime should be outright banned and that the race should be under caution. I do think that there should be at least an attempt to have a green flag finish. Just for driver's sake, just because, like, hey, if a caution comes out with 5 or 4 laps to go, and you're like, oh, I plan to racing to 200 laps. I didn't plan on racing to 196, 197 laps. Um, I do think that we should still have overtime. However, when you look at the format that it is now, looking at how overtime has progressed through the years, green, white, checkered, whatever, started in 2004, where you had one attempt to finish the race under green. If it was going to end under caution, and if they didn't do it that time, then yeah, it's over. And a few years later, 2010 or 2011, they moved to 3 overtime attempts, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, so now we're about guaranteed to have races end under green, unless of course the caution comes out on the last lap. And then we had the overtime line. Me personally, I didn't think that was the best thing to have an overtime line, but it was basically unlimited attempts until you got to the line. Now after that, it was basically the overtime format that we have now is basically that, instead of as many attempts possible until they get to the overtime line. Now it's just unlimited attempts until they get to the start finish line for 1 lap to go. So when I have a rule like that, I think about in the Clash, like how many overtimes did we have in the Clash? Because like we had that there was that wreck that came out in 3 and 4 when Logano blocked. Then there was another wreck that happened on the front straightaway when they were going back to green for restart. There was another wreck with Hamlin blowing the tire, and then there was another wreck with uh, Larson and Chase. And I think about it, and how many less, not just how many like less cars that we would have had torn up had we had the previous overtime rules. But I mean, at the end of it, I was like, am I watching a NASCAR heat for online public lobby in real life right now? Because literally, that's what it felt like. Like, we couldn't get, a straight lap of green flag racing in. And for those who uh, race, who are practically, all my viewers that I have on here and all my subs, if you hop into an online public Daytona lobby, how many times is there a wreck before you can even like get through turns 1 and 2 or 3 and 4? I mean, that's what it seemed like. So going back, as far as what can change. I mean, obviously, like there's gonna be changes, but I think what we could see, and I think what should be done. I don't know, but you think about it. How many overtimes did we have before that wreck for just for the 500? Because you had the wreck that happened. Can't remember if it was 2 to go in regulation or whatnot, but you had the wreck that involved Chastain and Priest in turns 1 and 2, and Logano in turns 1 and 2, and then you also had the restart goof that happened. They threw the yellow for that. If they were to have the format that we had in 2000 and before 2010, Newman would have gone to the hospital. Uh, and not just that, but not just the overtime, but I also look at the inconsistency of cautions. Now, I'm a fan too. Like, of course, I want to have a race end under green flag, but we saw the wreck that happened with Chase Elliott there, uh, right when they came out of the trial. I think about had they thrown the yellow there, then Newman wouldn't have had this wreck either. But I don't know if he got away or not. But evidently, NASCAR chose to leave the race green. So, with all that stuff being considered, um, a lot of it just comes down to inconsistency. That is my problem. You know, I feel like it would for once it would just be nice to have a decade or so of just consistency. I mean, they've been inconsistent in the cautions and their overtime. They've been inconsistent in when they throw cautions on the final lap. And, they've been inconsistent with other things like the points format, stuff like that. So, I mean, I just wish that, we could have a level of consistency. And I think that we wouldn't have like the vast amounts of controversial and unfortunate instances if we were to just have a level of consistency. So, yeah, I think that's what they're going to look at. And I think another thing they're going to look at too, obviously, CJ, like you just said, they took they took LaJoy's car and Newman's car to the R&D center. The big thing that I'm going to look to see what they do is how they make that part of the roll cage above the driver's head a lot more secure, because that was the big thing when I saw how the roof of how the driver's side roof caved in as soon as LaJoy hit it. I mean, yeah, you need to have some sort of crumple zone, but I mean, there's not really much room for that to happen. So, uh, and the thing is too, I'm looking at it as well, is that basically this whole accident, it was basically like the worst case scenario of impact. There is no worse impact other than, going head on into a wall at like 200 miles an hour, than getting hit upside down in the driver's side door where literally the bumper meets the window net, and then for you to go up in the air and then to land back down on that same spot. So that being said, going forward, I don't know what NASCAR can do for that, and I don't know if I would, I don't want to sound like a jerk in saying this, but I hope that when they're going through these changes, what they're looking at what they can do for this next gen car starting next year, that they could have something implemented, uh, like either like in the cars for an extra safety measure. I don't think it should be based off slowing down the speeds. Personally, I feel like when you slow down the speeds, you just bunch everybody up together, and that's not good. So, but yeah, I just think that, I think more or less, I think some good things that could like help with the overall safety is Iraq. Amazing the amount of recovery that he has had since that point, and hope to see him get back on the track soon. And also, I for him to be eligible for the playoffs. I hope they give that same thing to Newman, and honestly, I don't see why they would not do that. So yeah, Newman, get well, take the amount of time out that you need, be with your wife, your daughters, your family, your friends, and we hope to see you back on the track very soon. All right, so next topic we are going to move to here. Like I said, my notes here for this week were terrible with the amount of little pre-race that I got. Well, not pre-race, but pre-show stuff I got to do. Um, but yeah, we talked about it. 500, talked about Newman, NASCAR safety. Um, Before we get into Las Vegas for this weekend, uh, real quick, because I think this would be the best time to talk about it. eNASCAR Heat Pro League Qualifiers. Yeah, I think a decent amount of you have been waiting for me to talk about that. Um, so with this week being Daytona, we've seen with the first 3 weeks, we saw Charlotte, we saw Bristol, and we saw Phoenix. And, obviously, a lot of those places, yeah, you race, but also, you can build a setup to race around and like to try to just get a fast time. For what I would recommend for this week in the qualifiers, it's Daytona. Literally, it's not like it's not like all these other drivers racetrack where uh like the slightest minor adjustments on a car can affect the lap time or the overall race time by a few tenths of a second. If you can just, literally stay in the draft, make some nice moves, you're get a decent race time. But as far as a race time, like, let me just say this. The guys that you're going to see in the top 100 for the leaderboard times in A class, it's not going to be with single car speed. It's definitely not going to be single car speed. It is going to take them drafting with others, with a group of people, putting in setups that are designed to just go fast in a single file line. So, why I say that is because NASCAR teams are not going to be drafting and looking for talent based off of how well you can stay in a single file line and go fast. They are going to draft you and they're going to want you on their team based off of how you race. Racing is the key point in these qualifiers. I've seen it so many times, and I think they've done it's gone really well this season compared to last season. Last season, I feel like there was way too much emphasis put on the leaderboard times and not enough emphasis put on racing. This year, just simply with tracks being for a week instead of a new track every single day, it gives guys more opportunities to race. However, when I see people constantly posting about their leaderboard time and, worried about their leaderboard time, and, hey, don't worry about your leaderboard time. Worry about going out there racing, winning races, leading laps, running clean, not making contact with other competitors or the wall, whatnot, not cutting corners. And, if you can race and rack up wins, you'll be fine. Like, I mean, when I think about me personally, like my average leaderboard rankings last year, it was usually in the 20s or the 30s, I think. And then that's the time when Scott Cole was really involved and he had me on his little mock list. He had me as high as 14th, ranked at one time on his personal list. And very, very, very rarely did I personally have a leaderboard time higher than 14th. So it goes to show that it is the wrong mindset, especially with this week at Daytona going for a leaderboard time than racing. Because if you think about it too, if you are with, your group of 8 guys that are, you are putting in more time going for a leaderboard time with your group than for racing, if you're spending the majority of your time going for a leaderboard time, and if you're always like the guy that's lined up in 5th, 6th, 7th, every time you finish a race, yes, it's going to record a fast race time. However, it's going to always record that, oh, you finished in the back half of the field. It's not going to record you winning all those races or finishing top 3 in all those races where you're spending all that time trying to get a good leaderboard time. So, that being said, yes, maybe spend some time, maybe just a couple races of, hey, let's try to get, decent leaderboard time. But at the end of the day, it is so important to race it out. Race it out. Because teams don't want to see how fast you can go in a single file line. They want to see how well you can race. So that is my little eNASCAR Heat Pro League soapbox for this week. I hope to see a bunch of you guys out there at Daytona. I've already seen an extraordinary amount of lobbies already this afternoon. And by the way, shout out to the NASCAR Heat crew for the fix. I messaged them last night, and I was like, hey, there's a weird lack of draft glitch going on, and they went ahead, took the time, researched it, and this afternoon fixed it. So for anyone who was having problems either late last night, early this morning about there being no draft, NASCAR Heat, they have fixed that up. So yeah, I hope to see you guys out on the track. I'll be running around with you guys. Just don't be driving like a complete jerk and taking people out or, going below the line and making passes, and we'll get along just fine. uh, so yeah, that's it for the Heat Pro League segment for this week. So that being said, to wrap up here, they are at Las Vegas this weekend. And of course, one of the biggest storylines going into this weekend is they got Ross Chastain substituting for Ryan Newman. I obviously, I hate the circumstances that Ross is in that car, but I love that the opportunity that Ross has in this. I know, yeah, Ross was doing great up there in the top 5 for a good portion of the race during the Daytona 500 last week, but that was Daytona. It's not like an intermediate track. How many times do we see where we go to super speedways where, like smaller teams are able to run up there towards the front and whatnot? So this week with, being an intermediate track, being Vegas, this is an amazing opportunity to see not just Ross Chastain and what he can do, but Roush Fenway in general. I mean, you think about it, 2 years ago, uh, at my point, 2 years ago, I thought that Roush Fenway Racing was in huge jeopardy of going on, what was it? I thought they were in a huge jeopardy of not being able to come back. And with them putting Ryan Newman in the 6 car last year, and for him to make the playoffs on points, not by a win, but by points. He had to beat out guys like Jimmy Johnson, Daniel Suarez, who are, in my opinion, are much better equipment than Roush is. For him to be able to put that car in the top 16 in points, I think he finished regular season like 15th, so he beat out Clint Boyer as well. So yeah, that was a great job by uh, not just him but that race team, showing that hey, we have the cars to be able to do it. We just need the drivers. So uh, they took out Stenhouse as well this year, and they put in Busher, and Busher's one of those guys I think he can elevate the team as well. So, I mean, both of those cars, they were up there in the top 5 in the last couple laps there in the 500. And I know I'm going to kind of contradict myself because I just said, you can't tell a lot from super speedways compared to tracks like Vegas, intermediate tracks, drivers' race tracks, whatnot. But still, you had those 2 cars up there, and Newman himself said that, I don't even know that they were running good at the time during speed weeks. That he said that he himself said that um, they weren't going to be able to tell everything until they get to Vegas. But I have a feeling that with the opportunity that Ross has, and with them putting Busher in at 17 for this year, that they're going to do a lot better overall as a team this year. Probably their best season in a long time. So yeah, those guys I'm going to be watching out for. There's guys to be looking out for in general too, and I'm from here on out for the rest of the show. I'm kind of going off the top of my head because I did not get this far in my notes. Obviously, you have to look at Penske, Keselowski, and Logano. They have both been really great, especially when it comes to Vegas the past several years. So those are 2 guys that I'm going to be looking out for. Harvick as well. He's done great at the uh, intermediate tracks, and just Harvick in general. I thought he had a great run last week at Daytona. Even with the amount of damage that he had earlier, he was able to come back and get a top 5. Uh, yeah, so uh, yeah, so that's gonna about wrap it up here before I get into the last segment, which will be uh, my race picks. But for you guys right now, if any of you guys watching in chat still have any questions at all regarding anything from last week at Daytona to something with the NASCAR Heat Pro League to something this weekend at Vegas, um, or anything maybe in the Truck Nerds Xfinity Series as well, go ahead and leave a question there in the live chat, and I'll get it after that. But anyway, so I think what we can expect for the race this weekend at Vegas, I thought the intermediate tracks in general were some of the best races last year. Uh, Not just like overall from last season, but some of the best racing that we've seen from intermediate tracks period since like 2014. Uh, so I expect we're gonna see another good race this weekend. And CJ, I was just about to get to that. I appreciate the ambition though. But thinking about just race we saw last year, I think that we can see we're gonna have a good race this weekend. So yeah, race pick. There's like a decent amount of guys you could choose from. Um, I know I picked Ford last week, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and pick Ford again. Uh, I'm gonna go with Keselowski. Like I said, Penske has been really good to these Team Penske drivers, and Keselowski himself has been pretty decent at Vegas. Uh, so yeah, Brad Keselowski is my pick for this weekend at Vegas. So yeah, I want to see what other things I can talk about here in case there's any other questions that are going to be popping up uh, here in a bit. But But yeah, so I don't see any other questions yet. Yeah, thank you guys so much for hopping in for the podcast for this week. This has gone a whole lot better than last week. Me personally, just seeing the amount of engagement that you guys have brought in here, uh, commenting, the amount of viewers that have popped in here. We had up to 8 or 9 viewers at one point, which last week was downright terrible. As far as for this podcast going forward, there's no place, we're going to be talking about NASCAR, talking about esports, then also let's like some other things as well. And also I'm in the process of it. I'm trying to work on it, but me personally, I'm trying to get some guests to hop on. I know it's gonna be hard to convince maybe a few, just because this is a brand new podcast. But still, though, we can try to maybe get some decent, somewhat decently well-known people for hopping in here, and maybe join us for some episodes throughout this year. So, with that being said, that is going to wrap it up for this edition of Workman's World. Thank you guys so much for watching. Oh, and by the way, for those who are hoping that there's going to be a core league race tonight, there is not. However, in just about 1 hour, Richmond Raceway Esports will be throwing a 13% race at Daytona. You had to already previously sign up for that. I think the sign up period for that is over with, but yours truly has signed up for that and is going to be participating in that tonight. So that will be live on my channel from my perspective. Other things coming up as well. Midnight Broadcasting Network Pocono Raceway Cup Series. The last race of the round of 10 is this upcoming Tuesday at Chicagoland. That is, it's my home track. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm also currently sitting 4th in points, 17 above the cutoff, which top 7 after tomorrow night will be in the points. So I don't want to get too comfortable, but I'm feeling pretty confident heading into that going tomorrow. But yeah, that being said, everybody, that is going to wrap it up for episode 2, week 2 of Workman's World. Thank you guys so much for watching. God bless and take care. We're going to shoot for the same time here next week. If anything changes, I will let you guys know. Thank you guys. Love you all. Appreciate it. We'll catch you next time.